Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Very well.
Not too bad.
I'm good. Thanks
you?
for asking. Yep, good. Yeah,
Sorry, I
good,
wasn't
thanks.
good.
No, all good,
How are you?
all fine. Very well, thank you. Very well. And we are yet again recording back to back because yet again the boys are jetting off, only for a short while this one, but we'd like to get some content in the can, as they say in the biz. I don't know if they actually say that. I'm just making shit up. So we're just doing another story. So what are you drinking?
We've now cut our supply of Feathertop Rosé down to 5 bottles.
Excellent work.
Those are numbered.
And Swanee?
Well, I was telling you something out of the back fridge that I bought the other day, and this is kind of like an anti-advertising. It's very ordinary. It's
Is it a drink?
sparkling.
I saw you take the first sip and you went,
shocking.
oh,
I just
and
had to
put it
read
down.
what it was. It was supposed. It's like sparkling water, but I've just read what it says. It's sparkling water infused with wonky raspberries. So it's got no calories, no sugar,
raspberries.
no sweetness. It tastes shit. It's really bad. And now I remember why I got it. It was on sale.
They're the
No
ones
wonder
that are
it
a
was
bit,
sale.
you know when raspberries have been in your fridge too long and they get a bit mouldy? That's a wonky
They
raspberry. if
fall
ever I
apart
saw
in your
one.
hand when you go to pick them up.
It's not pleasant.
They're just mush.
That'll be
Oh.
very short-lived. Anyway,
Okay.
that would be why they were on sale. Never mind.
I wonder if
Oh,
they'll
that's
feature in
really
the
not
new
nice.
Wonka movie.
I don't know.
Wow.
Oh, I saw that the other day with Timothy Chalamet, right?
Yeah, I saw just literally like a 5-second clip of it. And
I
it's
think
just
it might be
Johnny
like the
Depp
backstory or something. Yeah, I think so, but
Is
I think I don't. I've never seen the Johnny Depp one in its entirety because my kids were terrified of it, and
Squirrels are frightening.
it's a bit weird looking. But
And so are
Yeah.
Oompa Loompas.
oh, that was the best bit. The Oompa Loompa character was
Love Oompa
Hugh
Loompas.
Grant.
Oh, that's
That
the
looked like
new
it was
one.
going to be genius.
In the new one?
Hugh Grant.
Yeah,
It's
in the
really
new
like
one.
very. He's the Oompa Loompa
I
with
love
great
that.
attitude. So I actually think that
reckon-
would be brilliant. That was the best part of the trailer.
I reckon I'd watch it just for that.
Well, you might not even have to. If you look at the trailer that I saw, he's in it and he's brilliant.
There's a big carry-on about it because he's not a
An Oompa Loompa.
vertically challenged individual, that there was a big carry-on about casting him. But it's called acting, people. You pretend to be something you're not.
Correct.
Anyway,
So
just
We
putting
had-
that out there. We're so
On our
over
last
this
I'm
episode.
so
bullshit.
over I feel like we're just going to overcorrect
On our
it.
last tour of China, there was a short woman acting as an Oompa Loompa.
Really?
Somebody's
Really
gonna
acting
do
as
that
an Oompa
behind you.
Loompa? Or
Literally in everyday life. It wasn't a little person. It was a woman who was about literally 4 foot tall and 4
Yes.
foot wide. And she was a horrendous personality. So we
Yeah.
were all calling her the Oompa Loompa. So when
Right.
Schmidty said that we might come into fire because Hugh Jackman isn't an Oompa Loompa but was acting as one, then I said, well, there.
Not Hugh Jackman, Hugh Grant. Let's be very clear on that.
I don't even think
When you
Hugh
said that, then I
Jackman
went,
will be
what?
anywhere
What?
near as good as Hugh Grant. Yeah, I know. God.
Hugh
same
Jackman
place
as an
at all.
Oompa Loompa. God, I'd go to the movies to see Hugh Jackman as an Oompa Loompa. That's funny.
Oh, yeah, he's got his shirt
Oh.
on.
Is Hugh Grant playing every Oompa
The
Loompa or
sexiest
just
Oompa Loompa ever.
one?
Yeah,
I
is
don't
it-
know. In the trailer that I've seen, Willy Wonka he's met him, so he's talking to him, and Hugh Grant's very proper, and he's saying, something like, "Oh, don't you know who I am?" or something like that. So if he's just a representative or whatever, he's just a one-on-one scene. But it was very
Is it-
clever.
You're right. In the Tim Burton version with Johnny Depp, there was
Yeah.
just one man who played all the Oompa Loompas.
But did you love the original film as a child?
Yes, I did.
I was just absolutely obsessed with it as a child, like absolutely. And the thing was, it wasn't like now where you had access to it and I could watch it all the time. If it came on TV, we'd watch it. And my mum, I think the first time I actually even had it on like a DVD, I think I was like an adult.
Pete TV, come on.
Said it
How
to
can
me.
you
But I
not love
loved
that?
it. Except the scary bit where they were going crazy. And I was like a bit
I reckon
dark.
even the last time I saw
So
it, I
dark.
loved it.
Deep Roy was the actor who played the Oompa Loompas in all the
And
Oompa
was
Loompas.
he
Deep
an
Roy.
Oompa Loompa in real life as well, or just...
He's a person who has dwarfism.
Yeah, right. So so it's okay for him to do it, but not you.
Well, that's right. So they didn't complain about the fact that he did it, although there was a bit of a backlash about having just one, probably because it took acting jobs away from other people. And now it's Hugh Grant, so it's not even Deep Roy or anyone else.
Weren't you guys telling me about
been-
with the Wizard of Oz? Didn't they get a bit rowdy? I'm sure we've covered this on the podcast.
They essayed. Judy Garland, yeah.
Did
I think
they?
someone put a hand up
Oh
her
my
dress or
gosh.
something, yeah.
Oh, I heard
Yeah.
they were like drunks and just very badly behaved.
Oh, they were naughty, absolutely naughty. Yeah.
There's been similar claims about straight people playing gay
Straight
characters.
people playing gay people. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and it's just a load of shit. Like you say, it's acting.
That's because there's not enough homosexuals in the world of theatre and acting.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
What about
straight
the
Straight
gay
face.
people playing straight people? Like, far out.
I know,
That's
Kevin Kline in French Kiss. No one complained about that.
you don't have to narrow it down. Like,
Oh, it's just one I was talking about it the other day. He's very manly.
I will have you know that I'm a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
It's got to an Oompa Loompa part. What do you mean?
Too late.
The very...
I will have you
I think
know.
he'll be brilliant.
I'm a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
Because the whole bit, I was like, yeah. And then I saw Hugh Grant and I went, oh, now you've got my attention. I'm interested now.
Yeah.
How very
Real
dare
life
you.
Oompa Loompas
Come on,
would say
Lemon,
he's
we're
not the
leaving.
Perfect size.
They're not happy. They've slammed him.
All right, well, that was a massive segue away from what I'm drinking, but I am drinking half a glass of not Chandon, what's it called? Grandon, the very cheap version.
What the hell?
Grandin, which is what I popped for our New Year's Eve episode, which happened about half an hour ago.
That might be what I was
So
drinking the other night in the paper
probably.
cup.
Oh, look, it's fine. It's
a
what you
week
drink at
later, you're
weddings.
still drinking it.
And it's still fizzy. Yes.
Amazing.
I suppose I should introduce us. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarky, and given that it's 2024, we're going to liven it up a bit. Together we are Trial by Wine. Best of the new year to everyone.
Happy New Year! Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so now that we're all so really hyped up, I'm going to tell a story that's going to bring us all down. Hey! Okay.
Don't you bring me down today?
Today, I will. Look, it gets resolved in the end. So, my sources for today's
You get
story.
knocked down, but we get up again?
Yes, it's a real Chumbawamba story. CBSnews.com, 48 Hours, The Cinemaholic, thedailymail.co.uk, and thenews.com.pk. Never come across that one before, but there you go.
Oh, PK.
What country is that?
Yeah, and
Is that the chewing gum, the land of chewy, or is it...
Pakistan, maybe? Could it
that
be?
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Really? The story will
Continue
tell
on with the story.
Yes, intrigued.
Let's go back to the 80s from our timey-wimey machine. Hair was
We
big.
like the 80s.
Yeah,
Me too.
shoulder pads were even bigger. And Flashdance, What a Feeling, was the number one single. It's
In
that
the
era
83?
83, because that's when I'm telling the story.
I was
That's
gonna say,
right.
not
I know,
88,
because
surely.
Big Russ took me to see Flashdance at the movies, and he was a Boilermaker, and I was an obsessed. Oh my God, I love that.
Absolutely nailed it, Swanee. I think it was June 1983.
Big
that
Russ.
this next
And that was
bit
exactly when I
starts.
Did you
turned
leave
10.
him stranded at the drive-in? Branded a fool?
No. What movie's that? That's Grease, is it?
What will they say Monday at school?
Sandy.
There you go.
Yay. That's
Yeah.
the one, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's June 1983, I think. It's that era that I have no memory of. Well, at least I couldn't have told you what was on the radio at the time because I was much more interested in listening to musical theatre because that's what I was being exposed to at the time, and anything that my sisters had on vinyl. You know, sometimes you think, how did I not know that, or why haven't I remembered? And then I start to think, did something really bad happen to me and I've blocked that whole
Aw.
decade out? But no, I was just being a dork and going to school and Not actually bothered by any of these things.
But I have
not influenced by pop culture.
Things that happened in the early 90s when I was at uni that I'm quite unaware of because I don't know that I ever watched, which is ridiculous as it's uni, but news. I was just
90210.
drunk the whole time, and if it wasn't something that we were talking about, I don't know what it is. Sometimes things come up and I think, when was that? And it'll pop up in that year group. But I went, who knows? I wasn't watching the news or reading a newspaper. I was just doing what I had to do to get by and survive.
In Richland, Washington, 21-year-old Anne Croney was visiting the Columbia riverfront. She was sat on the hood of her car looking out at the beautiful views and taking some time out. While she was there, a young man approached her and struck up a conversation. Anne asked him if he'd ever water skied on the river, and he said no, as he didn't even swim. At first, nothing seemed amiss, but after a little while, his voice started to shake, and she thought, I don't like this. She got a weird feeling about him and said she had to go, and she tried to get in her car. He then pulled a knife on her and ordered her to take her clothes off. He then stuffed her underwear in her mouth to silence her and make her walk to a quiet part of the riverbank. Anne,
Was
being
it
a total
daylight and everything?
I feel like you've kind of got me here too fast.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
agree.
Say,
people are already with knives and got their gear off. It's a lot. You didn't even.
Okay,
warm
but
yourself.
Still getting over the
wait
Russ
for
and
the next
Sandy
sentence.
show.
Wait for the next sentence.
Oh,
Anne, being a total boss, remembered he'd said he couldn't swim. So she bolted into the river and basically swam for her life and got away from
what
him.
a legend. There you go.
Brilliant.
The story.
You got me back.
Brilliant.
I'm with you again. I'm
The
good.
end.
Yeah, me too. Oh,
That's awesome. I love that
end.
story. And
Yep,
then
I don't
hope
find
it-
anyone
the
needs
rest-
sentencing.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great.
Yay! Happy New Year! Yeah. She made it.
There should be more stories like
She
that.
made it. Yeah. She made it to a dock on the other side of the river and she was found there by passers-by. Obviously, she's in the nutty, so, a bit awkward. She reported the attack
Did
and
she take her undies out of her mouth? Or
I'm assuming she did to breathe in the water, probably spat them out as she was doing her, not breaststroke.
doesn't
What's
breathe
that
in
one?
the water.
The Australian
She hasn't
crawl.
thought about it. She should have taken them off and put them on.
got gills.
No, to be able to breathe while swimming. Okay? Funny man. Anyway, she reported the attack to the police and the man was arrested. The end. No.
What? That quickly?
The end.
It's not involved in it, is it?
No. The police, this is where it starts to turn bad. The police who interrogated this guy found that he had already served time in juvie for raping 2 girls and attempting to rape a third. He admitted to the police
So he
that he
didn't
had
need a fourth one?
No, he had a problem, and he was going to rape Anne had she not gotten away. And he said, I need help with this compulsion. I know it's not right. So he went through the trial process. He was tried and sentenced to 10 years in prison. But of course, he only served 3.5 years and was out on parole in 1987, provided he participate in an outpatient sex offenders treatment program, which he did attend, but no one really knows sure for how long. And then he fell off the radar.
Or whether the program ever worked.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that it's not going to have worked, given that we're now here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we get to
We
the
haven't
bit
changed
where
stories.
now we get to the bit where you could brace yourself.
She
put it
didn't
that
get
way.
away.
Yeah, the next one doesn't, unfortunately. So fast forward to Seattle, Washington in December 1991. Michael Jackson's Black or White was the top single that week. With Boys
Michael
to Men
Jackson was going to be by the river.
Boys to Men enjoying a runner-up, and even Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch making an appearance.
Ooh.
16-year-old Sarah Yarborough and her friend Amy Perotti were at home alone having a typical girls' weekend. They'd sat around watching a basketball game, eating snacks on a Friday night, which, if you swap basketball game for rom-com, was pretty much every weekend in my teens.
Yeah.
Sarah's parents were away at her brother's soccer's tournament, and her mum wasn't really comfortable leaving Sarah alone, but, was kind of okay with it because Amy was there and Sarah had planned the whole weekend out, so she was pretty comfortable. Well, a bit uncomfortable, but, it'll be all right. Now, this is a very American expression I'm about to use, but Sarah had drill practice on the Saturday morning. And for us, I was going to say, those of you who don't know what drill
cheerleaders?
practice is, cheerleading.
Push me and then just touch me until I can get my satisfaction. She was ahead of her time.
That's a jackhammer, not a drill.
No, I think they use lots of
We
pneumatics.
discussed
There is a drill.
hammer and-
I think there's a grinder in it.
There's everything.
too.
There's definitely.
There's a lot of
That is so
there's a lot
good,
of power
that, isn't
tools
it?
going
Yeah.
on. No, that's 2000 and something, and Carla would probably.
Yeah, she
be
was
able
ahead
to
of her
tell me.
time.
That was London, wasn't it? Or was it before that? Maybe.
I remember in Bath. It was
Europe.
on in London, but I remember us in Bath seeing it when we were at one of the
I can still
bars
do
in
that, the ladies'
top of town
boobies
Bath.
going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, drill practice is cheerleading, as Willie correctly pointed out, and on that Saturday morning, and she'd actually slept in, and Amy remembered her flying out the door, still with hot curlers in her hair because she was running late. Unfortunately, Sarah. Well, it is when you're a cheerleader, and Sarah had gorgeous, long, naturally red hair, and it was quite curly, and so she, being a cheerleader, she had her uniform, like her cheer uniform on, and she had her hair in hot curlers, ready to make herself, get in for practice, because it's very important. I don't know. We're not American, but I believe it's very important to look right.
I'm thinking more
I've
about
seen
their
Mean
hair
Girls. I
rolls
think they've got they're cheerleaders in Mean Girls.
Once you take the hair rollers out, does your hair just automatically fall into position, or
Her hair probably would have.
Right. So back to the girls'
Sarah
colours.
never made it to her drill practice.
Oh.
When Sarah didn't come home from practice, Amy rang some of her teammates and they went looking for her, but they only found her car in the parking lot. So she'd actually gone to school, her school. She parked her car in the parking lot, and so she was not very far at all from where the practice should have been.
Okay.
So about an hour after the practice had ended, some boys were skateboarding through the school grounds as a shortcut, and they saw a man come out of the bushes, which were not very far from the car park. Drew Miller, who was 13 at the time, remembered the guy looking straight at them, and the encounter was really jarring. This guy was, looking scary. The man kept walking ahead of them, and as they followed, they came across Sarah. Some of her clothes had been removed, and she'd been strangled to death with her own stockings. Realising that the man they had seen was likely the killer, they turned back to him, and he was staring right at them.
he hadn't run off?
No. Drew and his friend, however, sensibly, skated home immediately and called the police. Because Drew and his friend had basically eyeballed the killer, they were able to provide the police with descriptions, and they created photo fit sketches. The killer had also left DNA at... Yeah, they were. The killer had also
I was
left...
fascinated by photo, because if I looked someone in
Sometimes
the
they're
eye
weird.
and then 3 hours later had to
I wouldn't
draw
be
a
able to
picture
describe
of
them. I know. No, I couldn't do it.
I couldn't draw a picture of them if their face was right in front of me, let alone...
I agree. I couldn't describe someone. I mean, honestly, they had eyes and brown hair,
He
it's
looked
about
like
as good as I
Gollum
get.
because he had big eyes and was staring back at it.
Anyway, apparently it was pretty accurate, actually. The killer had also left DNA at the scene, as semen was found on Sarah's clothes, although she had not been raped before her death. So we've got witnesses and DNA. So this is going to be a slam dunk case, right?
Should.
Oh. The police, of course, run the DNA against the National DNA Database. Remember, this is 1991, so
If he's
they were
he's
running
served
that later.
time, though, he's served 3 years of a sentence.
If he had served time and they'd taken DNA and it was on the CODIS registry, but the CODIS registry didn't really start until after 91. I can't remember what the year was. It might have been 94. They were, however, taking DNA samples at crime scenes from about 1986. So they definitely took the DNA for this, but there was nothing on the database. No matches came up. Over 4,000 leads were called in, and the police
Can I ask a question?
painstakingly followed.
Were we in
Yes.
the same state that this happened in previously? We were,
Yes,
weren't we? Yeah.
Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we're in the same area.
Yeah,
So we're sort of
awesome.
outside Seattle in Washington. Yeah. So over 4,000 leads were called in. The police painstakingly followed them all down. People in the community were freaking out, knowing they had a killer in their midst and they were still at large. The nature of the murder was really disturbing for people too. A lovely,
enough.
lively and innocent 16-year-old girl.
In the day, at school, it's very bad.
Exactly. Described as talented, creative and kind. killed on the school grounds in broad daylight, basically in front of people.
Yep.
One of the detectives who worked on the case said just the innocent nature of this young woman in her school drill team uniform with her hot curlers still in her hair. This was just pure, unadulterated evil. Yeah.
It's proof the curls were still in.
But it was still there. She'd got out of the car, basically, and been murdered.
Wow.
Even for experienced investigators, the scene was really hard to deal with. And Drew Miller also said, I didn't put it in here, but I will now. Drew said when they found her body, the way he'd left her body, she'd put up a hell of a fight. So
That's what the 13-year-old said.
Good girl.
Oh, I mean, that stayed with him forever, but yes.
Oh, fair
yes.
enough.
Oh, so even though there were witnesses and thousands of leads, like so many other cases, the line of inquiry shriveled up and the case went cold.
Really?
What? I know, it's kind of surprising, isn't it?
That.
Neither did I. It's like, really? Why?
You would think,
why.
wouldn't you?
It just feels like,
if you've got a sketch of this guy,
Yep.
Everyone's on high alert.
Age, sex offenders, people who'd been released, all those kind of things. I mean, how many thousands and thousands of people are we now talking about in that state alone or that region? I mean, that's what terrifies me.
In that area.
Yeah.
One of her friends said that they were going through like the yearbook trying to work out who looked like the killer. You know, like everyone kind of around them became a suspect. Everyone was freaked out by this.
That's like the Claremont killer here. Yeah.
Do you know if the drawing was reasonably accurate?
Yeah, it was.
So if you're a police person going through similar offenders, like the history of similar offences, it's possibly reasonable that you would come across him? Or are we...
maybe, but I think it's 1991, so computing and computer databases were pretty newish.
Like sharing data.
Suspect that the attack from earlier, which was 8 years earlier, might have been in a slightly different area. So it was in the sort of same region, but not a different area.
Right.
And I get the feeling,
different area.
I could be wrong, but I got the feeling that this is sort of like a suburban thing. Like it's not like a huge area, lots of big police in it. It felt very local. It felt like the local police investigating a local crime.
As in, the area it happened wasn't a big suburb. It was like a smaller community.
It was outside of Seattle. It wasn't quite in Seattle.
Locally.
The police did periodically run the DNA against CODIS, as is often the process of cases that have DNA evidence, but no suspects over time. And, they sort of thought that given the nature of this attack, that the perpetrator might reoffend and pop up on the database, but unfortunately it never came up. So in June 1993, the community unveiled, so it's 2 years after Sarah passed away, or about 18 months, the community unveiled a bench to honour Sarah. The bench reads, Carpe diem, seize the day, a mantra Sarah lived by. Encased in bronze are some of her favourite possessions, ballet shoes, a replica of Sarah's beloved dog Gibby, and books. Bill Fuller, who was a friend of the family and whose daughter was in Sarah's class, remember her as a lot of fun to be around. And he was quoted in the 48 Hours documentary about this, talking about how she was just a lovely girl to be around. Like, it was so devastating for the community. He was also pretty instrumental, I believe, in getting that bench made and honouring Sarah. Time went on, and in June 1993, so about the same time as the bench thing, the class actually graduated, which was bittersweet for many of Sarah's friends who couldn't help but think that she should have been there with them. Her mother, Laura, recalled how some of her friends would ask what Sarah would think of a guy they were dating, like they were looking for her approval. So the community sort of, it felt like they kind of kept Sarah alive through continuing to talk to her mother about, what do you think Sarah would have felt about this? How do you think she... it wasn't one of those situations where sometimes, people are so uncomfortable with something that's happened that they don't talk about it at all and they don't acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. It feels like this community was still...
I think that's when my experience of that is when you're younger and those things happen, people do talk about it
it's hard to
more openly and try to keep the flame burning kind of thing.
Yeah. I just can't imagine what it was like for her parents, Laura, and she had two brothers as well. So the case continued to go nowhere. Thousands of leads were looked into, but none of them were useful to progress the investigation.
That in itself is hard. Thousands of leads is a lot.
There was a lot of work went into it. Like, it was not defective detecting.
I guess that's what I'm wondering. Was it that they were actually being super vigilant, but there's just so many leads that don't go anywhere?
Not unlike the Family Ties episode that we did many moons ago now.
Yeah.
There is always more than one way to skin a cat or to catch a killer when DNA is involved. And in 2011, investigators turned to genetic genealogy to try to find a suspect. Now, this was interesting because in 2011, genetic genealogy was unheard of pretty much. It was kind of an emerging thing, and it was pretty much kind of dissed by most police forces, and, you know, people just thought it was a bit wacky or inappropriate or not good enough. But the police who were investigating this crime, because they had nothing else to go on, they were like, let's just give this a go. So they really did kind of forge a bit of a path here by just saying, no, we'll just see if this gives us anything. So, and certainly from a funding perspective, this would not have been, well, I was about to say this wouldn't have been cheap, but as it turned out, I remember reading that the woman did it for free. Well, it wouldn't be cheap now, right? But at the time, I remember reading that this woman said she'd do it for free as a bit of a test. They enlisted the help of a woman called Colleen Fitzpatrick, or, you know, as her ancestors would have said it, Colleen Fitzpatrick, a renowned US forensic scientist.
Here we go.
Such an Irish name. Such an Irish name. And she used software to compare the unknown DNA with public DNA databases and was able to link the killer to a family called the Fuller family. And it was a line that was pretty much around the area, and specifically to a man named Robert Fuller. Now, I don't know who Robert Fuller was, but he was related to Bill Fuller. Remember, I talked about Bill Fuller not long ago, the man whose daughter had gone to school with Sarah and who was instrumental in the bench, right?
Yep.
That came as a bit of a surprise to everyone. But
did it come as a surprise to Bill Fuller?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Trust
good.
me. So not a direct match, and so it's a familial match. And no one actually thought Bill Fuller was involved in any way, because also he wasn't. But he was too old for a start, comparative. Like, we've got eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
So he's too old, he's too short, he doesn't match the description whatsoever. I think he was bald and the guy had long hair, you know, like he's nowhere near what was described.
Had he got someone pregnant some years ago?
No. Bill himself said, I've got nothing to hide. Sure, here's my DNA.
I thought you were going to say he was his father.
No. He's like, fine, I don't know who this person is, but here, have my DNA. If it helps you find whoever did this, oh, good, right?
On your Bill.
Well, I don't understand how that works anyway.
Bill's a good guy. Bill's a good guy.
Yeah, I understand that. I just don't understand where we're going now. So, I mean, you've got my attention.
Well, it's interesting because Bill's cleared. So is whoever Robert Fuller was. Don't know who he was, but anyway. Okay, I did a little bit of looking into the whole DNA thing, and it's a percentage match to the number of alleles or something. I know, don't come at me. I know that's the wrong word. I'm tired and I've had too much to drink. There's a certain percentage of these markers and they're in a certain order. So when you get a familial match, obviously you're not going to match all of them, but there are enough of them that say that there's enough shared DNA that you are related in some way.
Well, yes, I see that because I'm adopted. So when I've done all that stuff, I can see that.
But I don't know how I don't know how she got to the Fullers per se.
Yeah, that's what I was intrigued.
Apart from maybe she found enough of a match to this man called Robert Fuller in some database somewhere, and I think it was ancestral DNA type thing, like the genealogy thing.
Yeah.
That she said, okay, that family, somewhere in that family is someone who's matching this, right?
Which would lead them straight to Bill Fuller, right?
Well, yeah, and also Bill Fuller's the only Fuller that anyone knew about in that area.
That's what I mean. Who's around the thing?
Yeah, and he knew.
Yeah. So the
victim. I know we're stuck on the
wrong. That's a coincidence.
Yeah, I understand that. But I think that's why we're stuck on
in the context of the DNA, that's a coincidence. Yeah. So not Bill himself. Well, it's not Bill himself. The DNA he willingly gave to police did show there was a relation somewhere in his line that was likely to be the killer. In 2019, after 8 years...
That must be horrific.
Yeah. It wouldn't be good to know that someone you're related to is a murderer. Yeah.
Particularly if you're close to the case and you've done what he's done in terms of the seats and everything.
How could you imagine that you somehow would be related?
I think there'd be nothing worse than being so close to that and knowing that you're related to the killer. Because what would you do? You wouldn't go to Christmas, would you?
Until they find him, I suppose. No. Yeah, no, it's a good point.
I'd be looking at everyone going, who is it? What?
I was just going to ask the question.
How do you bite into your turkey at Christmas? Is there something in that?
From the DNA, can they tell if it's pre him or post him, age-wise? I'm tipping, because I've answered my own question, because they're saying it's a younger person than he was.
Well, yeah, the eyewitnesses knew it was a young person. And Bill Fuller, the man who came out
the DNA won't.
The DNA won't
allude to age or sequence.
I don't think it'll tell you
tree.
the sequence, though, no.
It'll allude to relationships. So if you have the mother and fathers, you can determine from a person's DNA without having the rest of it where they sit.
In 2019, after 8 years of periodically scanning for a match, they got a hit.
Hang on, so he's had 8 years of knowing that someone in his family is likely guilty of it.
Yeah. Someone related to me in some way, has done this, And it took, because basically what they had to wait for was for someone's DNA to be on a registry. And because this woman, remember the woman who was doing this work was working with public DNA databases, not the police one. All right, so they get this hit, right? And it's Edward Nicholas, and he is a distant relative of Bill's, and he's also a registered sex offender. Now, interestingly, his DNA was on CODIS for years.
Also, he's related and is a registered sex offender.
Yes, but he's also not the killer, so don't get ahead of ourselves.
Oh, Lord. You're throwing spanners.
Skeletons are coming out of the closet.
CODIS stands for the Combined DNA Index System.
Okay.
So it's effectively what they've put together where everyone who commits a crime now has DNA and it's registered in CODIS. Okay. But that's what I was saying earlier about it being established
after.
So they get this Edward Nicholas, who was on CODIS, comes up as a partial match. Edward is a distant cousin of Bill Fuller, and as I said, it wasn't actually a perfect match for the DNA profile. Lo and behold, Edward has a brother, Patrick Nicholas.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, Patrick Nicholas was a loner. Patrick worked in an auto parts store.
Jolly old Saint Nicholas.
But was he on the sex offenders list?
No, he was not. He worked at an auto parts store. He was divorced and he lived alone. He seemed to have no friends or family or children in his life. No one visited him, and he didn't drive. Everywhere he went was by bus, which is significant because the bus route Patrick often took went past the Federal Way High School where Sarah was murdered.
Dun, dun, dun.
At the time of Sarah's death, Patrick was 27. And you know what? Looking at photos of Patrick from when he was 27, he looked an awful lot like that sketch that Drew Miller had described for the police.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But wouldn't his stuff be on file if he'd been in jail, or is it someone else?
No, I don't know. I don't really understand this either. His first couple of crimes were in juvie. They were probably, they seal... if you're a juvenile person, they'll seal that.
Yeah.
He next gets arrested, and as far as I can tell, 1983 when he attacked Anne. They didn't take any DNA because it was pre-taking DNA.
Yeah.
I was going to say, did they always take DNA?
Not in 1983 they didn't, because they didn't know, they didn't have a crystal ball to know that they would do this. 86 is about when they start doing DNA stuff. So he skips through there. Then we get to 91 when he attacks and kills Sarah. Because, spoiler alert, he's our murderer. Then more stuff happens, but for bits I don't understand, for reasons I don't understand, they didn't take DNA. He was not required to provide DNA. So there's no DNA on file for this guy. Like the Golden State Killer. Remember in Family Ties I talked about Joseph D'Angelo Jr., who's the Golden State Killer, not to be confused with the other Night Stalker and the Morning Stalker, whatever. The original Night Stalker.
Lights.
Yeah, he's the original Night Stalker. Yeah, all that. He doesn't have any DNA on file. So they had to follow him around and find a way to get DNA off him so that they could actually work out whether he was the killer. So the police covertly followed The police covertly followed him to a laundromat because he's very salubrious, where he did his washing.
Took his dirty clothes.
Yeah.
They stole a pair of his jocks.
No. Whilst he was waiting for his laundry to be done, he had a couple of darts out the front and flicked the cigarette butts away. So if you are a smoker, you've got to remember to discard of your butts thoughtfully. And if you are a murderer, you should take them with you. In this case, Patrick did not take his butts with him.
Thanks for your solid advice, Schmidty.
FYI, just saying. He didn't take his butts with him, and the police were able to use them to run a DNA profile which matched Sarah's killer perfectly. So, of course, they arrested him.
Wow.
Ooh. This is another one that was reminiscent for me of, do you remember Swindon Knights? Can't remember the dickhead's name.
Yeah.
The one who murdered someone and they arrested him for it, and then he said, "Do you want another one?" kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the detective was the one who was hard done by.
Pilloried in the end. That's right. Yeah. So when they started this interrogation, they asked him why he thought he had been arrested, and he said, "I don't have a clue." As it progressed, the detectives were asking him about Sarah's murder, and he said, "What year was that?" And when they said the year, he said, "I just want an attorney," and so no more questions. So the police immediately started to think if he needed to know what year it was.
Also, how many
indicates
more?
That he's,
there must be more.
That's right. He can't differentiate between others.
100%.
He has to know the year to be able to know which murder you're talking about. That's right. So unfortunately, he no commented out, got an attorney, lawyered up. So they didn't get anything more out of him for that.
Also, whilst we're giving advice to murderers, that is exactly what anyone convicted accused of a crime should do. So,
yeah, but he shouldn't have said what year was that. He should have said no comment from the first moment they arrested him, and got an attorney.
Of course, but the no comment.
I mean, if we are giving advice
is what
to
I meant.
criminals,
that's what he should do.
Our criminal legal advice tells us to say nothing, and yet every week we record one of these. Remember Anne, I spoke of earlier at the beginning? Anne was one of at least 5 other women that Patrick approached in their cars, pulled a knife on them, and in most cases raped them. Anne was lucky to get away, but another victim, a minor, was raped by him in 1994, and he was convicted of that attack. He was not required, again, I don't know why, Swanee, to submit his DNA for any of these attacks.
No.
Wow.
Now.
Is it in the same city, same state?
But I don't understand why he's not on the sex offenders register, even based on that one. Even if they didn't have his DNA.
I agree with you.
It doesn't add up, does it?
So then the trial began, and this is really important, in April 2023.
Oh, my God.
So whilst this airs in January 2024, we are currently in 2023 as we record it. So this year. Right?
Oh.
So she died 32 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I just did a quick Google search as to when did the sex offenders register start.
Begin.
Yeah. And in Victoria.
In the US, in Washington.
Started. Yeah. But so in Victoria it started in 2004. So
much later maybe.
We're 11 years behind, but maybe it just wasn't around then.
You could be right. His conviction was 94, and if he wasn't convicted of anything else post that, that could be why. But I don't know. I didn't look up when his brother was convicted of stuff, so maybe that was more recent.
So in the US, few states required convicted sex offenders to register addresses with local law enforcement. The 1994 Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Act required states to implement a sex offender registration program in 1996, maybe?
Which, again, would be after his last conviction. Anyway, so even though Patrick Nicholas had a history of violent, sexually motivated crimes, the judge ruled his history as inadmissible in the murder trial, citing that it would unfairly prejudice the case against him, which it totally would.
We've discussed this before. It totally would have, but is it relevant?
That's the point, right? And the judge is saying it's not relevant. And also because he had done time for some of those.
You get a fresh slate each time, do you, just to go and do it again?
Yeah, that was the judge's position on it. And this was a murder case, a murder trial, right? So
yeah, the others.
I mean, violent crime is violent crime in my opinion. And when we get to the upshot of this whole case, my problem with this whole case is, why are we treating rape like it's no big deal? Because that's what's happened throughout this case. Anyway, I'll get on my soapbox later.
Reserve your high horse for a bit later. Yeah.
So 32 years after Sarah had been murdered, her family and friends gathered to attend the trial, including Anne Croney. Anne had been contacted by investigators who had linked her attack to the MO of Sarah's killer, and she'd immediately recognised him. The defence, she didn't speak at that trial, by the way, but she was there. The defence basically said, and this is the bit about it being 2023, this is the bit I found hard to swallow. The defence basically said familial DNA was a load of new rubbish, being an untested science, implying a pseudoscience like cryptozoology, that there really wasn't any evidence against Patrick Nicholas. Quoting the defence attorney, David Montez, they used technology that was not only unproven, but just wacky, really? Again, this trial took place in April 2023.
Who was the lawyer? Dennis Tenuto was the vibe.
David Montez. And the defence is saying this technology and science is wacky.
But also, they've got a DNA match. So regardless of the familial DNA bit, which led them to him, they've got a 100% match. Screw that argument.
It's a bad defence. He's not the person that killed Sarah. The police needed an answer more than they needed the right answer. And so they turned to new, novel, untested technology. Is DNA technology really new and novel and untested? Yeah. So then he goes on to say, to your point, Clarkie, genetic genealogy is a new field. It really hasn't been tested out. Should we be making important decisions based on something that is not well or deeply understood? And you're right. It's got nothing to do with genetic. That got us here, but it's a direct match. I know. However, the prosecution were also able to show evidence found at Patrick's house. Detective John Free described it as such. It was almost like a lair. There was no working electricity in this house, stacks of pornography all throughout the place. We also found a newspaper from 1994 that had on its front page an article about the Sarah Yarborough case, and going through one of the kitchen drawers, we found a torn photograph taken from a magazine of a woman in a cheerleading outfit. It's still circumstantial, right? Regardless of...
that's a stretch.
You find a picture of, it's a stretch, right? The smoking gun is the DNA.
Yeah,
but if you buy the defence's argument, that's wacky. I just find this bizarre. Then someone, I can't remember, I'm not sure who, maybe someone in the prosecution, I'm not sure, told the person in 48 hours, as the person doing the interview, said that the chances of a 100% DNA match belonging to another person is 1 in 120 quadrillion. Now, this is where I went down a rabbit hole, because I'm like, hang on a minute, there's not even that many people on the planet to get near that. And look, statistics is not my jam, but this doesn't seem right.
No, I would say that's not accurate.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research and I came across a rather good article on New South Wales courts.co.au, and they were saying the statistical assumption is that a DNA profile is expected to occur in fewer than 1 in 10 billion individuals. So not 120 quadrillion, 1 million peoples, it's 1 in 10 billion in the general population, which is still more than the Earth's population, but the statistics aren't calculated from the population. They're not moving back from population. They're extrapolated out. So anyway, in this case, the DNA evidence and the fact that Patrick had means, motive and opportunity led the jury to finding him not guilty of first-degree murder premeditation.
Just coming back to that, I
Not
just did
guilty.
a quick Google. Identical twins share 100% of their genes.
Well, he wasn't a twin, so thank you for that.
No, what I'm saying is that twins don't occur 1 in 10 billion people. They occur quite
That's why I said in the general population, not of twins.
Who are part of. I guess what they're trying to say, because I'm just trying to understand that myself. What they're probably trying to say is that the likelihood of one person who isn't a twin having somebody who has the same
it's 1 in 10 billion.
DNA is 1 in 1 bazillion gazillion, but actually in the real world it's a lot more than it because of identical twins.
Oh, look, there are lots of articles that say that DNA can be misused in trial. right, by defence and prosecution.
Well, that 100%, I would agree with you 100% on that, yes.
Yeah, but I just don't buy this argument anyway. So I'm just going to say it again because you seem to have missed it, although Swanee did pick it up. So in this case, the DNA evidence and the fact that Patrick had means, motive and opportunity led the jury to finding him not guilty of first-degree murder premeditation.
Hang on. Sorry, I absolutely missed that because I was too busy Googling
penny drops.
DNA stats. No, yeah. But you said the DNA evidence and the circumstantial evidence led the jury to convict him.
Find him not guilty.
Not guilty.
Sorry, find him not guilty. I would say ignoring the evidence. That's...
Okay, I'll put you out of your misery. But they did find him guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree murder. So the defining point that I was stringing you out on there is premeditation. There wasn't enough evidence that he premeditated the murder.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
So the jury did their job. It's all right. That's fine. So that's fine.
Ooh, you're shifty.
I know.
I know. You're a shit bloke.
I'm learning from Shay Pandora. I'm learning how to get my little, her little hooks in there. She likes her little twists and turns. Okay, so 2 weeks after his conviction, on the 10th of May 2023, this year, the sentencing hearing was held. All of Sarah's family and friends attended the hearing, waiting for some final justice. It was at this hearing that Anne Croney spoke. When she stood up and Patrick saw her, he did a double take and shuddered, and someone said it was like he'd seen a ghost. Anne said, "We rely on a system of justice that is designed to protect us from predators like Nicholas, and this system failed me. It failed Sarah, her family, friends, and countless others. I ask the court to please not make the same mistake." Patrick Nicholas received a sentence of almost 46 years. For Sarah's family and friends, the sentence brought mixed emotions. Sarah's mother, Laura, said, "It makes me mad that he was free for so many years, and who knows how many other people were hurt during that time. I don't know that we'll ever know, and that could have been avoided." So, like the Family Ties episode where we discussed the ethics of familial DNA, this is another where the friends and family of Sarah would like the law to change to allow familial DNA matching, not just direct matching. And so going back to your point, Carla, earlier about he didn't have his DNA in any systems, but his brother's was in there for a long time. He could have been picked up a lot earlier had the legal fraternity and the police been allowed to do familial DNA matching, not direct. From the way I've understood this situation is without his direct DNA being in there, there's no match. They don't find anything. But it's a bit of it's a question about the ethics around the use of DNA as well. I think what happened was Colleen Fitzpatrick, the woman who pretty much kind of pioneered genetic genealogy, she was running against public DNA databases. She wasn't running. That's why she found Robert Fuller, the rando, and then Bill. Like, that's why we were going through these rounds of connections to completely sort of only genetically, but not really connected to anything people, because she couldn't go direct to source because the brother, Edward, was in there. So I also don't know if there are other victims of Patrick Nicholas, but when he said what year in relation to questions about the murder, does imply there may be others. So that is the case of Sarah Yarborough and Patrick the animal Nicholas.
It's a lot, isn't it? Like it's a quick case, but there's a lot going on.
There's a lot in it. Yeah.
So I remember we did the camouflage assassin.
Yeah.
And we discussed whether song lyrics were admissible.
Previous convictions should be admissible in. Not that it made much bearing on this, because it still went down for first degree and second degree murder and 46 years.
Also, what I'm saying is that we discussed the controversy of whether song lyrics should be admissible as some kind of character reference. And now we're saying that regardless of that, we also are now saying that previous convictions shouldn't be admissible.
I don't think they are.
Well, they weren't in this case, is what I'm saying, right? So there's a very broad spectrum of things that should or shouldn't be admissible. But in the case of sex offenders, I would think they probably should be. And I wonder about the wisdom of our legal system. When you've got DNA match, I kind of go, maybe we should be including them. If we don't have DNA match, if it's just, literally something happened and there was a sex offender in the area and therefore because he's a sex offender, he did it, that's completely different, right? I don't think those two things should link. But when there's a body of evidence that, I think if there's DNA on her cheerleader uniform that matches somebody 30 years ago, that's a pretty cut and dry case. And we've all heard stories of why that isn't a cut and dry case, and I understand that. But at what point is someone's past admissible in a case? And I find that piece fascinating. I don't know the answer.
No, but it might be the judge felt that it was irrelevant because at the end of the day, there's enough evidence and the case is strong enough that is being presented here. Because I'm sure they have an overview of what the case is being put forward to say, look, we don't even need to put that in here. We've got this DNA. We know he did it. He matches the description that the boys gave us, like he's...
If you're Anne and you hear that he's done this stuff a few times before...
She was devastated.
But that's my point,
was
right?
Horrified.
At what point do you go...
She escaped a murderer.
Well, possibly she only escaped a rapist.
In her mind, though, that's what she thought. She moved on with her life, and then when she found this out, she's like, "Oh my God, he murdered someone."
So double horrification, right? She was horrified she escaped a rapist. She would have been horrified to find out that he'd been charged or he'd been guilty of that in the past. I think as someone, not speaking from experience, obviously, but as someone who is raped or potentially a rape victim, to find out that person has done that before and been found guilty of it, you've got to question the justice system. And
I totally
it sounds like there's a number of instances where old mate could have been dealt with. Had they included his past history when he attacked Anne, maybe he would have gone in for longer. Maybe he wouldn't have got out in 1987. Maybe he still would have been in jail in 1993. Maybe none of this would have happened. But I guess...
He should have been in jail.
He
got out in 3.5 years from a 10-year
But that's what I'm saying. Got out in 1987. Yeah, no, but probably because he did something nice in prison. But what I'm saying is...
That's the bullshit of it, right?
10 years...
You behave yourself in jail, you get out early. It's no bearing on the horrible thing that you did in society. What you're doing in jail should have no... I don't care how good or bad you are in jail, you should do your fucking term.
I think what I'm trying to say, Schmidty, is that had they factored in his previous history, because I think sex offence is something that does lead to a lot of repeat offences.
Other violent crime.
Had they factored it in at the stage of Anne, maybe his 10-year sentence would have been a 25-year sentence, not a 10-year sentence. So maybe he wouldn't have got out in 3.5. Maybe he would have got out in 15. Maybe he wouldn't have. Who knows? But
he would have got out in 3.5 because he's joined the JCs. He's found God. He's doing all the right things.
When does past history become relevant?
Oh no, I hear what you're saying. Sorry, I'm just so frustrated by this whole thing, right? Because as I started to say earlier, he's in juvenile detention because he's already raped 2 girls and attempted to rape a third before he's even got out and attacked Anne. Now he's tried to attack another girl. He's no longer a juvenile, and he just goes, "I've got a problem. I know it's bad."
He's also not rehabilitated.
Glass rod.
I mean, no, yeah, I agree. He does have a problem, 100%.
I don't really have much more to add at this point. I know that sounds a bit weak, but I mean, listening to your conversation, I mean, obviously I agree with it. Why wouldn't I? I mean, if people are doing the wrong thing, they need to be punished for it and they should be required to fulfill the term. But I mean, I just find that we sit here week after week and it depends on which precinct they're in, which state they're in, whatever else, how things are so inconsistent. Do you know what I mean? And at one time it works because they've got something got a system. Oh, everywhere. Do you know what I mean? You never, and that's kind of not the beauty of it, but that's what I do find quite interesting about trial by wine is every time I think, oh, well, this is what will now happen then, we're blown out of the water and, oh, no, not in this situation. This argument was put forward and that person didn't have to, prove it on this occasion. And then the next crime will completely dispel that and prove something else. Like, I mean, the variance is unbelievable from one crime to the next. It's amazing. Yeah. You cannot sit here and there's no linear relationship between every single crime and what happens and then you get this crime. It's just what's going to happen next. It's unbelievable how it feels random. It's not, but it feels it.
But why doesn't he get life? He gets done for first-degree murder. He doesn't get life.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But he gets 46 years. He's old enough now that he'll never come out, right?
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't get paroled.
46 years is longer than life, though.
So even if he does 30 years or something at 60 years old, if he lives to 90 in jail, which I don't believe many people do, he's not going to be free ever again. But he did have 30 years.
By the time he gets that.
He had 30 years of living his own life with no repercussions to that crime.
And who knows what else happened in that time.
Correct. And he's a problem in his own right, obviously. But it's this business of sort of like to your point earlier about how many times does someone kind of just get a bit of time for this attack on a woman and that? And Swanee was talking about it in an earlier episode. Swanee was talking about sort of this sort of disposable, the quality of disposability of women. This was a young cheerleader, but, next week it's another sex worker, like this idea that women can just be attacked, brutalised.
It's just a never-ending stream
I'm going to put him in an
right?
acid bath. Sorry, acid bath for this motherfucker. I'm so angry about it at this point in time.
How old did you say Sarah was when she was murdered?
I just want to take the 16. I want to take this collective pain of every woman who has been a victim of some repulsive male who thinks that this is appropriate. Just take all of that pain and somehow distill it into an injection. And I'm just going to inject this man and every other bastard with the collective pain of centuries, thousands of years of women just being treated like shit. See how you like that? That's my punishment for Patrick.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
And I'm going to add in period pain.
And, of course, this has to be done in Trial by Wild World.
And childbirth pain. Why not? Just top it up. Just put it all in there.
Can you add period drama to it as well? Make him watch period drama too, because, fuck, that's annoying.
Agony beyond all agonies. Swanee, have you got any final words?
I don't know, really. I think that, I think you're certainly in a very rich territory when it comes to my feelings about how, it just feels like crime after crime after crime of women being, sexually assaulted. And it's just horrendous. But trying to look at Patrick, I struggle because I don't really know a lot about him. He's just a repeat offender who's just this person again, sort of on the edge of society.
And a bit of a loner.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't really know. He just that there must be so many people like that just out in the fringe, right? That's what freaks me out about when we do all these stories. There's always another one. There's always another one just lurking around in the shadows, just waiting for an opportunity. That's in the middle of the day. It doesn't have to be some kind of girl walking down the street late at night. It doesn't even have to be that. It's like I'm going off to a cheerleading practice in the middle of the day. It just is that gets under my skin. It's the kind of stuff that I think about. No, it's the kind of stuff where I just go, it's super, super creepy that there must be so many people out there. I know we have a great laugh about it and, so many of the things that we do are...
We don't laugh about murder.
Not about that. That's the whole idea of us getting together and having a good chat. But sometimes I do find myself just thinking, oh, God, if I really allow myself to think about some of the things that we've covered, God, you'd never leave the house or want to be in the house. There's so many people
terrifying, I know.
Lurking out there. I think the thing that I find the hardest to deal with is the fact that because it's just, as we say, like this sort of constant stream of all these type of crimes, no one ever seems to learn. Nothing ever changes. Do you know what I mean? That's where I think is the disappointing part is, where it's got to be something within human nature, right, that these crimes exist, which is, why people are so interested in crime documentaries and because it's just this, oh God, we could do it forever.
I know it feels like there's so many, but the reality is comparative to the population of the planet, these are outliers.
Yes.
These are outliers. Yeah.
I know. It's just sometimes a random nature.
You have to take some comfort in the fact, I get they're random, but they are outliers.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm happy with your sentence for Patrick about injecting the pain of pain. Women, future, past and present or whatever. What I don't understand is the complexity of the legal system, right? Because we constantly discuss issues where the police should have done more or the legal system let everyone down because sometimes it's too harsh, sometimes it's too soft, sometimes it's...
Oh, I know.
Who knows what the hell went on here. And to what Swanee was saying, and I guess, Schmidty, what you were saying too, is this happens all the time. When do we learn? And in, 2053, are we going to be sitting here saying this happened 30 years ago and it was of the time and therefore, nobody really knew what to do? Or do we learn and do we go that, with certain crimes, if there is a past, maybe they should be included. And maybe we should be okay with saying that that person should never come out of detention, or there is another way of punishing someone to the point where they can't overcome their own impulses. Therefore, they will do this again, 100%. Let's make sure they can't do that again because too many people are murdered, are raped by repeat offenders who have had a pretty good deal from the legal system. And on the flip side of that, too many people are found guilty of murders they didn't commit or of crimes they didn't commit. So it's a very complex area, but how do we improve it? And I don't know the answer to that by any stretch, but I'm just not okay with it. And this is another example, I guess, of where there were so many opportunities to convict someone before Sarah's murder.
Do you have a sentence, my friend?
I'm happy with your sentence for Patrick.
Oh, we're just going to...
I think the defence link to,
Wacky.
DNA evidence being blah, blah, blah. Like, go away, mate. I don't like that blurring because, it's not a dark art. It's not a black magic. Sure, the process of getting from DNA on Sarah that they went through to find Patrick...
But once I
can understand why some people would have issues with that. But they found him and his DNA was 100% a match. Therefore, shut that down. What I've learnt on all of our recent travels is, we've seen Iceland, we've seen Malta, we've still got a whole lot of stories in South America, China.
I bet you do.
I mean, we do the US all the time. There's even some that have crept up in Australia whilst I've been gone. There's a lot going on out there. And if you could take away the barriers of country, I still don't think the legal system would be good. So I think it's just interesting to get an insight into...
It'd be interesting to say, what country do you think does do it properly? Because I don't think any of them do.
But also...
maybe it's just...
Are we better now than we were 30 years ago? And are we going to be better in 30 years' time? Or are we just going to keep fighting the same old fight?
Don't know. Anyway, well, thank you very much. I know that was, I thought that was going to be quick, but we actually did quite a detailed chat on that. So thank you for being part of the journey on that. And as we say every week, miss you already.
Miss you already. Lovely story, darling. Well done.
Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.